to kick off the U.S. Cyber Command's very first cyber flag exercise. A few months prior to that, when we initially signed on for this inaugural event, it was scoped at supporting up to 50 participants. It was described to us as a 5-yard pass in this seed program to start the cyber flag activity. Well, at go time that day, we had at least double that. So somebody up the chain of command said, go big or go home, and so we had no choice but to go big. So with a very short window of opportunity, maybe 6 or 8 weeks, we were able to acquire and configure the hosting infrastructure for this exercise, as well as to develop and deploy the thousands of machines that constituted the game space for this exercise. So we were fairly stressed out, but not too stressed out. We'd been working for several years in building the cyber workforce in the Department of Defense, and we'd been studying what makes a team effective. And experience building exercises we found to be essential to creating that mature cyber workforce. Now, the spectrum activities in that space at the time was clustered really around two ends of the spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you could find subject matter experts cobbling together a lab or two using unused gear for their peers. And on the other side of that spectrum, you had these large force-wide exercises. Those large force-wide exercises generally helped decision makers and the commanders. Technical operators, not so much. So we aimed to fill the middle of that spectrum. And we developed a platform through which organizations could regularly place themselves in these isolated, realistic environments to practice their trade. And we developed engaging and relevant scenarios to facilitate that practice. We were able to also incorporate the knowledge building and the skill building capabilities of our virtual training environment. So we had a holistic package for people to train on individual tasks as well as collective tasks, which overall raised their experience level and paid big dividends for those teams at those large force-wide exercises. Since then, for the last few years, our team's been doing some tremendous work on innovations in realism, efficiency in the platform management, as well as we just heard Rotem talk about some new approaches to assessment on those for those operators. And our continued research aims are to add more collaborators and as we just saw, increase the immersion in these exercises such that the experience building capability is raised for all throughout the DoD. Lieutenant Colonel Tom Jarman for the Marine Corps Cyber Warfare Group has graciously accepted our invitation to share with you all a little bit about how our efforts on their behalf has impacted his cyber workforce. So let's welcome Colonel Jarman.
Afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. I want to thank Chris May and John Yarger for inviting me to come up today and speak to you. A little bit of truth in advertising. Just to let you know, I am probably the only non-technical person standing before you these past 2 days. So if you have a hard technical question, I'm just going to look in that direction for somebody to help me out. As a career intelligence officer, currently serve as the executive officer at the Marine Corps Cyberspace Warfare Group. Let's see if I can figure this out. I'm going to skip a little bit to the end and then go back. Nope, maybe I'm not. Marine Corps Cyberspace Warfare Group, subordinate element to Marine Forces Cyber, which is the Marine Corps component command to U.S. Cyber Command. At Marine Corps Cyberspace Warfare Group, we have a responsibility for basically man, train, equipping cyber mission force teams, provide those forces in support of the different commands. So from our perspective in that the man, train, equip piece, it's great to have a partner with SEI who can help us in solving a lot of those technical challenges that we face as we're preparing these teams for the missions they're going to go out and have to conduct. In that endeavor, some of the things that were issues that SEI specifically have been able to help us with, again, as we're preparing these teams, we face a challenge of how to create realistic cyberspace simulators to enable our teams to be able to conduct realistic training and realistic rehearsals, but in a closed or classified environment. Obviously, it's important for obvious reasons. We don't want to be doing a lot of our training or exercise prep or mission prep outside in a publicly viewable domain. So how do we do that in a realistic way, but in a controlled setting? And some of the things that we were looking at, realistic internet replication, wireless without RF, specifically Wi-Fi, GPS, radar, industrial control systems, SCADA systems, looking at like ship propulsion, SCADA systems, and then custom malware replication. So we know what our adversaries are using in terms of malware perspective. How can we train against that? How can we put that in realistic environments in the manner in which we would expect to see that in a real world, so we can go ahead and train against that. SEI has been great in terms of not just working with us, but actually being able to produce a real-world solution that we can physically lay our hands on and actually be able to utilize and help to train a team. A couple things, and I'll talk about these a little bit more in detail, but on the realistic internet replication, they came up with what they call a gray box internet simulator. For the wireless, without the RF, wireless emulation link layer exchange, Daemon WELLE-D, which I think has a link to somebody who may work at SCI. Simulated integrated bridging systems, which helps us with the propulsion systems and those industrial systems, and automated malware and malware utility configurator. So Graybox. What Graybox is, basically it's a VM machine that simulates real world internet connection. It consists of about 80 routers, can simulate the real-world latency between those different nodes, serves and replicates about 30,000 of the most popular websites. When it takes the information that was scraped off the real internet and post it, so the operators, when they're looking at it, they think they're actually out there on the internet. Also runs a host of a fleet of mail domains, certificate authority, and several layers of a DNS. So again, from an operator perspective, they're in a closed environment, but the environment they're operating in looks and feels like as if they're actually operating on the real internet, as if they would expect to see in a real-world operations. Graybox, in a lot of regards, helps support some of the other things that they've support. The wireless emulation link layer exchange, or Daemon WELLE-D. Again, this ability to operate against the wireless environment without actually being in a wireless environment. Simulated integrated bridging system. So the simulated integrated bridging system replicates what you would see from a ship perspective in terms of the radar systems, the charting, plotting, navigation systems, steering control, propulsion, and those types of things. And then what you would see from an operator perspective is the interfaces between those systems on the ship, and again allows the operators to actually get in there, work on the systems as if they're actually working against a real set of systems. And then the last one, the automated malware and the malware utility configurator. We understand, based upon the different adversaries they're working with or working against, the types of malware that they've historically used or what we can expect our teams to be working against. So what this does is allows the teams to, in a closed environment, input this malware into the scenario. So when they're in their training or doing their rehearsals, the scenario they're working is a true replication of what they should expect to see in a real environment based upon the inputs that we know or what we know our adversaries are actually going to try to use against us and where they should expect to see those malware loaded up. So again, it just provides more realism to our teams. So instead of notionally training against something or just kind of white carding it, this is what you're going to see, actually put them in an environment, real hands-on, an opportunity to train against those situations, those types of environments that they're going to see in the real world. So again, from my perspective, from where I sit, again, non-technical guy, I've made myself successful through my career by, linking arms and arms with really smart people who can help me out. And SEI has truly been that for us. Again, the ability to come in and our ability to articulate a problem to them and our ability to provide an actual solution, again, put it in our hands so we can work with, has been a great asset. They've been a great partner in that regard. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to have to come up here today and listen to everybody. And if that, I guess I can take questions. Just don't make them hard.